You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. And wow, do we have a special guest for you today. Listen, for those of us who went into a kind of blue funk when Cecile Richards left Planned Parenthood Federation of America because she had been so brilliant for so long, we couldn't imagine who could possibly fill her shoes. Well, this April, we are celebrating the first year tenure of the woman who filled her shoes, the first Asian American to hold the post, and just splendid, jumping up and down on rooftops, doctor, patient advocate, spokeswoman, woman for all seasons. Dr. Leana Wen is with us today. And of course there's Surrealism Corner, and there's Fighting Words, and before any of those, you and I need to go inside the headlines. We're going to do something a bit different today and focus on only 2 stories inside the headlines, because each headline is so huge and what's inside each is so important. The first, yes, it's the Mueller report, or rather the Attorney General barring of the Mueller report. Trumpists are celebrating prematurely and dangerously, while most Americans are in a deep confusion and blue funk dangerously and prematurely. So I offer 3 approaches to mull over while we wait for some actual news about what the report itself contains, and not Barr's version of what he thinks it should have contained, or would like it to have contained, or wants to pretend it did contain. 1. No use getting apoplectic with comparisons to how the independent counsels in Watergate and over Bill Clinton reported to Congress and not to an attorney general as differentiated from this time. This, remember, was a special counsel, not, as in the case of Nixon and Clinton, an independent counsel. You see the value of an independent counsel, which reports to Congress itself without any interpretive interlocutors. Nixon was forced from office, and Clinton was impeached, although not removed from office. Unfortunately, this was not an independent counsel, only a special one. 2. Everybody take a deep breath, because we're in for more waiting, and yes, our patience is worn thin, but we have got to stretch it a little longer. It's no use fulminating about details in the document we haven't got access to, but that does give us a clue to our actions. Pressure on getting the Mueller report into public hands, complete with getting the underlying fact-gathering data into Congress's hands. And yes, with full or redacted only for the strictest security reasons, we know all that. The American public is hugely on the side of this effort, so we just have to keep it up and keep it up and keep it up. 3. Let's not spend too much energy trying to second-guess Mueller. But do keep in mind that as soon as Barr was confirmed for the post of AG, having made known his position very well, that the president was in fact above the law, well, very shortly after that confirmation, the special counsel's office began accelerating its winding down. It's almost as if Mueller and his prosecutors saw Barr's confirmation as an inevitable obstruction to federal charges, those that hadn't already been made, at least. So what did they do? They accelerated their farming out those cases to state attorneys general, in particular New York and Virginia, both known for dogged pursuit of the real culprits. What's more, state investigations are beyond the reach of the federal Justice Department, and also beyond the reach of a presidential pardon in case of convictions. All of which is to say that it's way premature to celebrate or to despair, but it's never too late to act. Demand the Mueller report. The other story is lurking inside a huge headline The sudden decision of Trump's so-called Justice Department's intensified assault on the Affordable Care Act. A Texas judge invalidated the entire law last year, going even further than the lawsuit before it had requested. That is, just to revise or scrap 3 pieces of it. It went for the jugular. A coalition of states is appealing the ruling of that Texas judge, and Trump's Justice Department last week had even been in agreement with the states, but has now switched its position, shazam, and gone on full frontal attack. I want to list what that really means inside those headlines, because all of us have grown somewhat inured to hearing that the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, or the ACA, is again in peril, and all of us have somehow gotten used to thinking, oh, it'll somehow prevail. But this peril is like no other, and so even a short list of the actual impact expected is vital to grasp. Here are 10 targets that will suffer the greatest impact should the 9-year-old ACA actually go down, and although space and time limitations restrict me to only a sentence or 2 about each, more details are easily found online at the New York Times or the Washington Post or Planned Parenthood. So, 21 million people could lose their health insurance, including 9.2 million who receive federal subsidies covering $525 out of a $612 monthly premium for customers in the 39 states that use the federal marketplace healthcare.gov. 12 million adults could lose Medicaid coverage, the government insurance program for the poor that's jointly funded by the federal government and the states. Enrollment in the program would drop by more than 15 million, including 3 million children who got Medicaid or CHIP, Children's Health Insurance Program, when their parents signed up for coverage. Few, if any, states would be able to pick up the remaining 90% of costs to keep their programs going. The biggest group able to access addiction treatment under the law is adults who have gained Medicaid coverage. The Kaiser Family Foundation estimates 40% of people aged 18 to 65 with opioid addiction, that's 800,000 people, are on Medicaid. The ACA requires insurance companies to cover substance abuse treatment, and they would stop if the law were struck down. 133 million Americans with protected pre-existing conditions, roughly half the population under age 65, could be disqualified or have to pay significantly higher premiums. This includes such common ailments as high blood pressure or asthma. 171 million Americans who no longer face caps on expensive treatments will no longer be protected. Insurers and employers used to put caps on how much they had to pay out in coverage each year or over a whole lifetime. And before the ACA, people suffering from conditions that are deeply expensive to treat, like cancer or hemophilia, faced enormous out-of-pocket costs once the medical bills reached those caps. A 2017 Brookings Institute analysis noted that 109 million people would face lifetime limits on coverage without the health law, with some companies saying they would cover no more than $1 million in medical expenses per employee. Now, the majority of people never get to those limits, but those who did were forced into bankruptcy or simply went without treatment and often died. About 60 million people are covered under Medicare, people over 65 and those with disabilities. They would have to pay more for preventive care like a wellness check or a diabetes check. They would pay more toward prescription drugs and also face the so-called donut hole or coverage gap, which the ACA sought to eliminate. Premiums for as many as 55 million people would go up as a result. 2 million young adults who have coverage up to age 26 through their parents' plans would likely lose that coverage, as employers could make the decision to continue it or not. $60 billion at minimum would be lost by doctors and hospitals as a crucial source of revenue because so many people would lose insurance. The Urban Institute estimated that nationwide, without the ACA, the cost of care for people who cannot pay for it would increase as much as $50.2 million. Among the small but not so small items included in the ACA are these final two. The ACA requires that menus list nutrition labeling and calorie counts at chain restaurants. That loss would begin having a very negative effect on the nation's health because such chains offer mostly high-fat and high-sugar content foods of which customers were previously unaware. And last but hardly least, the ACA requires many employers to provide, quote, reasonable break time and a private space for nursing mothers to pump breast milk, close quote. If you wait on tables and your station has 20 to 25 seatings, that's not such a small thing at all. It's time for a short break, but there's much more to come. There's a conversation with our new dynamic young leader, warrior sister at Planned Parenthood. There's fighting words. And, of course, coming right round the bend when we return, there's the Surrealism Corner. Stay with us. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back, and welcome into the Surrealism Corner. Here's a cautionary tale. While one of the greatest strengths of our species is its adaptability, that's not always such a great thing. For instance, climate change will be creating extreme weather events more and more frequently, but if extreme temperatures arrived in your zone, would you notice? According to a new study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, the answer is no. People learn to accept extreme weather as normal in as little as 2 years. In other words, if we keep seeing these anomalies in weather over the years, we'll just get adjusted to that. Where's your scarf and hat and mittens, darling? Don't you know it's July out there? And, oh, I don't know, the hurricanes and flooding aren't that bad this year. We're only on our 3rd house rebuilding, and the decade's hardly just begun. Taking advantage of the human capacity to adapt, I guess, a city in China's northeastern Rust Belt is offering commuters an ideological express train on the municipal subway system. The train is dedicated to the political doctrine of Chinese President Xi Jinping and was put into service last year in Jilin province as a birthday gift to the Communist Party on its 97th anniversary from the municipal government. Painted and furnished all bright red, the carriages feature dozens of Xu's quotes, and guides on the train use a traditional Chinese spoken word style to preach the party line to the beat of handheld bamboo clappers. Although propaganda's long been a crucial arm of the party and has permeated all aspects of life under Xu, reaching levels unseen since the Cultural Revolution is this. This is now becoming a personality cult almost as great as that constructed around Mao Zedong. You know, it makes you grateful for that fuzzy, static, sort of grumpy voice yelling in a Brooklyn accent, "Don't block the doors," on plain old New York subway cars. And now for some fascinating bits about the brain. The healing power of music, which has been shown to fight depression, lower blood pressure, and reduce pain, is experienced firsthand with the help of conductor Ronald Brownstein, who also deals with bipolar disorder. He created the Me Too, it's M-E and then the number 2 and then a slash, the Me Too Orchestra, back in 2011 to welcome musicians with mental illnesses to perform together and fight the stigmas around their various conditions. And this was the beginning of a partnership between neuroscientists and musicians. Video game addiction, also known as gaming disorder, is now recognized by the World Health Organization as a diagnosable condition. Psychologists have found that gaming triggers feel-good hormones in the brain, which creates a high comparable to drug use. WHO's new designation supports a small group dealing with the condition by enabling more research and better resources to treat the disorder. We often use the phrase short-term memory to refer to things that happened in, the last hour or day, but actually short-term memory typically lasts only between 15 and 30 seconds. Any memory that can be recalled after that length of time is the long-term memory, which means that more and more of us are suffering from long-term memory as well. But here's a fun one. When it comes to brain metabolism, the adult female brain is on average a few years younger than the male brain. According to new research published by the National Academy of Sciences, while all human brains shrink as their owners age, male brains degenerate at a much faster rate than female brains. Sorry about that, brothers. Researchers are only just beginning to understand how various sex-related factors might affect the brain's vulnerability to neurodegenerative diseases and aging, but so far, experiments measuring the glucose consumption and the flow of oxygen in the brains of about 200 men and women has revealed an algorithm that women's brains were 3.8 years younger than their chronological ages, while men's brains were 2.4 years older. The results are consistent with data indicating that older women tend to score better on tests of reason, memory, and problem-solving compared to men at the same age. By the way, for both women and men, gearing up to learn a second language in one's old age apparently increases gray matter volume and has positive effects on white matter, and might even, there's no firm results in on this yet, but might even help stave off Alzheimer's. Off you go to Babel or Berlitz. And finally, our word this week from another language that requires a number of words in English to approximate it is from the German. It's Dreikäsehoch. Dreikäsehoch literally means 3 cheeses high. No, that's not an order for a deep dish pizza. Dreikäsehoch describes a very short person, someone perhaps like me, vertically challenged, not quite 5 feet tall. The name implies that you're only as tall as 3 wheels of cheese pie stacked on top of each other. Now, usually this term is reserved for small children, but sometimes it's used interchangeably with the words Zweig or Pimpf, P-I-M-P-F, Pimpf. Oh, the surreal German language. It's time for another break, which we can spend grinding our teeth in rage at the regime's latest attacks on health care, in particular on women's health. But the remedy is forthcoming, just right around the corner after this break, when we talk with just what this country needs in an emergency, Planned Parenthood headed by a woman with lots of emergency room medical experience. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back. My special guest for the conversation today gives me hope about feminist, and for that matter, American institutions making wise choices about succession, and also gives me hope for women's health. When Cecile Richards left Planned Parenthood after so long and so wonderful a performance, we all worried who could possibly take her place. Well, her successor, and we haven't heard the last of Cecile either, but her successor is a miracle. She's a doctor, a public health advocate, an author. She served as an emergency physician and also as a policymaker. She's been a professor in health policy on the faculty of Harvard Medical School. She was president of the American Medical Student Association and the American Academy of Emergency Medicine Resident and Student Association. She's served as a health commissioner for Baltimore City. She's the first Asian American president that Planned Parenthood has ever boasted about, and she is the most vocal and impassioned explainer of the need for the existence of that organization and defender of women's right to health that I have ever heard. Her TED Talks have become famous. She became involved in U.S. and international health policy even during medical school. She served in Geneva, Switzerland, as a fellow for the World Health Organization, and in Rwanda as a fellow for the U.S. Department of Defense. Her book's called When Doctors Don't Listen: How to Avoid Misdiagnoses and Unnecessary Tests. She's written for Psychology Today. She can translate into English medical talk. There is a thought. And she's a frequent keynote speaker on issues of health in general and women's health in particular. I could go on and on. Her activism in terms of the opioid overdose scandal, her activism on behalf of abortion rights, and her passion, her empathy, her compassion. It's a delight and an honor to welcome the new, well, now a year old, president of Planned Parenthood Federation of America and Planned Parenthood Action Fund to this program. Dr. Leana Wen, the president of Planned Parenthood Federation of America and of Planned Parenthood Action Fund. Leana, if I may call you that, welcome, congratulations, and welcome to Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you so much, Robin. It's an honor to join you today.
Well, it's an honor to have you, my dear. Many of us thought, oh my God, we're getting separation anxiety because Cecile Richards is leaving and has been there since the year one and has been so fantastic. Who could possibly replace her? And the answer is definitively you. I cannot think of anybody better suited to take this leadership position on women's health in this country. You have been everything from an emergency room physician to a policymaker. So congratulations, and we so look forward to your tenure.
Thank you so much. I have huge shoes to fill. I am so honored to be leading this organization as a doctor, as a policy expert, but also as a patient. I come to this work first and foremost as a patient of Planned Parenthood. My mother and my sister have all been patients of Planned Parenthood too, just like 1 in 5 women in America. And I have seen for myself how much Planned Parenthood does every single day to provide life-saving and life-transforming care to millions of people around the country.
Yes. You tell us a little bit about you. You were born in Shanghai, and your parents and you, the family, migrated to the States and became citizens when you were, what, about 8, 9, something like that?
My parents brought me from China when I was just before I turned 8, and we lived in Logan, Utah. A long story there, and then went to Los Angeles. And in so many ways, we had a typical immigrant story that my parents worked multiple jobs to make ends meet. We depended on Medicaid and food stamps and other public services. And I'm very fortunate that I had these public assistance and public education, and that's really what the government is supposed to do. It's supposed to help you. And I think about the rhetoric that's happening now around immigrants and the public charge rule that is designed to deter people from seeking health care and food and other basic services. And I think about where my family would be now if we didn't have these lifelines.
Yeah, well, your mother worked as a hotel room cleaner and a video store clerk, and then became an elementary school teacher. This is classic immigrant. It's amazing. And your dad delivered newspapers and was a dishwasher, and then later on served as a technology manager for the Chinese Daily News in L.A. And their daughter became summa cum laude at age 18 at the university, and then was a Rhodes Scholar. And a national president of the American Medical Student Association. I mean, it is the classic American story, and one to be so proud about. And this very same story that is being traduced today. You're quite right. Shockingly traduced. So you come proudly bearing the scars of the immigrant experience, and will be a champion about it, I take it.
That's right. And my family and I were days away from losing our immigration status when we were granted political asylum. Had we not been so lucky, I would be here today as a dreamer.
But you became an activist in terms of policy and wanting to change policies that were inimical to public health very early on, and have been idealistic and yet practical in that way. I mean, this is just made, it seems to me, for Planned Parenthood.
Well, I'm a doctor, first and foremost. That's what I've always wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to be a doctor from an early age, and I specifically wanted to work in the ER because I never wanted to turn any patients away. I never wanted to turn someone away because they couldn't pay, because of their immigration status, because of who they were. Yes. But it's also from working in the ER that I saw how much of what makes people ill is not just the disease that they come in with, but all the other factors in their life, like lack of health insurance, not being able to pay for medications. And that's why I also knew from an early age that it wasn't enough to just be the doctor for the patient in front of me. I also need to be addressing these systemic ills and fighting for these policies that will actually help my patients stay healthy. It's that empathy, that compassion that I bring into my work now. And it's that same fight, because at the same time that I'm providing healthcare, that Planned Parenthood provides healthcare, we have to just as much fight to protect access to that care.
Yes, absolutely. You are the author of a book as well in, I think, 2013. St. Martin's published it, When Doctors Don't Listen, How to Avoid Misdiagnoses and Unnecessary Tests. Tell us about that book. That sounds very important. As somebody who was, she said selfishly, misdiagnosed for about 1.5 years with Parkinson's disease, which I've since learned is a common misdiagnosis because it presents in so many different ways. Tell us about the book.
When I was in medical school, my mother was misdiagnosed for over 1 year before she was finally diagnosed with what turned out to be metastatic cancer.
Oh, my God.
And I was her caregiver during this time, and I saw how much there is a disconnect that exists. Because I was training to be a doctor. I was in medical school and in residency while she was going through her multiple rounds of chemotherapy and radiation. And I saw how much physicians and nurses and the healthcare system is trying to do the right thing, but how much patients are experiencing that disconnect in what they need, and their needs are not being addressed and not being met. So I wrote the book in part to help bridge this disconnect and help physicians and nurses in the healthcare system be the caregivers and the providers that our patients and family members need from us, and at the same time, help patients and family members to be better advocates for themselves, because we only have one life.
Yes, we do. Tell us what you think you're mostly facing now as the guiding light and mother of Planned Parenthood Foundation and Planned Parenthood action. Some of it, I'm sure, is same old, the attacks from fundamentalists, the attacks from some of the churches, despite the history of churches on, for example, abortion. But hey, history and fact shouldn't get in the way of bigotry, should it? So some of that, I'm sure, is same old. And if there's anything new coming down the pike, and that's one question. What do you think you're facing in the real world? And the other question is, if you weren't having to respond to that, what would you most love to see? What's your vision for Planned Parenthood in the future?
Well, we are in the fight of our time around women's health, reproductive rights, and in general, all of our health, our lives, and our futures. At the moment that we're speaking, we have 16 cases that are one step away from the Supreme Court. And if any of them are heard, there's 16 cases directly involving abortion access that are one step away from the Supreme Court. If any of them are taken up, we face a real situation where Roe versus Wade could be overturned or further eroded in the next year, which means that 25 million women, 1 in 3 women of reproductive age, could be living in states where abortion is banned, criminalized, and outlawed.
Correct.
That's what we're facing. Over 100 years ago, Planned Parenthood was founded on the simple idea that your body is your own. And if it's not, then we cannot truly be free or equal. And we're facing that fight now as ever. Just over a month ago, the Trump administration came out with the changes to Title X, the Title X gag rule. And what that gag rule says is that if you are a woman who goes to a clinic that receives Title X or public funding for affordable birth control, then your doctor is not able to give you a referral for abortion care, even if you ask for it. And it's not even clear what would happen if it's medically necessary. Title X is a program that funds for 4 million women and families with low income to get STI tests, breast and cervical cancer screenings, and affordable birth control and other primary and preventive services. We're talking about dismantling an entire safety net for people who otherwise cannot get health care. These are people who live in rural areas, who don't have health insurance, who cannot afford basic preventive care. And we're facing, this is the existential threat of our time. I mean, we're talking about taking healthcare away from people and stripping us away from our rights and dismantling the very systems that my predecessors, that all of us have spent so much time fighting about.
This is appalling. Absolutely hair stand on end appalling.
Very much. And because of everything that's been in the news around President Trump, we are not talking about the harmful policies, the unethical, illegal, and dangerous policies that will affect millions of lives and generations to come. And we need to call this out. I mean, the Trump administration, at the same time that they are banning access to abortion care, is also reducing funding for sex education and changing the definition of evidence-based sex education to be abstinence only, which we know is just not true. I mean, this is not effective based on science and medicine. The Trump administration is trying to take away birth control, is allowing employers and universities to deny workers and students access to birth control. It's 2019 and we're arguing about birth control. I think it is important for all of your listeners to know about these harmful policies that are coming out on a daily basis from this administration, and for us to speak up and fight back. And one way that people can fight back against the unethical Title X gag rule is to text Protect 10 to 22422. That's Protect X, or 10 to 22422. We need everyone in this fight, and this is one thing that people can do today.
And people who are obsessed with the ins and outs of the Mueller report and the general corruption of the regime should understand that there's a basic connection going on here. I just recently wrote a piece called "And Again, Reproduction," because the first thing that Hitler did on consolidating power was to outlaw abortion, and in fact make it punishable by death or life in prison. The women were fired from public jobs and from teaching jobs and from the bench. They couldn't serve in the judiciary. There has always been first an attack on women's health, because that's the way into reproduction, and because they had reestablished the yearning, supposedly, for Kinder, Küche, Kirche, which is children, church, and kitchen, which is where good German womanhood should be, because that would not threaten their apparently very fragile manhood. And that is the cry today of the far right, and it is now leaching into the mainstream right with the, you will not replace us mantra that was chanted in Charlottesville and the neo-Nazi groups. So people who are concerned about the overall policy direction and the profound racism and sexism and nativism of the Trump regime should understand that that is intimately connected with their virulent attacks on women's health and women's reproduction.
And Robin, thank you for highlighting the challenges of our time. We're seeing this not only on the federal level, but very much on the state level too. Yeah. Just last week, we had one more governor sign into law to ban abortions after 6 weeks, when most women don't even know that they're pregnant.
Right.
Just this year in 2019. There have been more than a dozen states that have introduced legislation that ban abortions so early in pregnancy. This will have dire consequences for the future of women in this country. And we need to call it out and talk about how much we are rolling back the gains in public health that we've made. And at a time when maternal mortality is increasing, I mean, the rate of women dying in pregnancy is higher today than it was 30 years ago.
Shocking.
An African-American woman is 3 to 4 times more likely to die in pregnancy than a white woman. A woman in Georgia is 10 times more likely to die than a woman in California. I mean, these are solvable problems.
Yes.
And we should be doing everything we can to increase healthcare access, not take it away. And in fact, this is what people around the country are saying. I'm heartened that in the last midterm election, women, particularly women of color, rose up and voted in record numbers, and now we have the most diverse, most female, most pro-choice House of Representatives ever in our history.
That's true.
That's what we should be celebrating, and we should be not resting on our laurels, but instead fighting with everything we have, because this really is about our future.
Yes, and no one's going to do it for us. It's the last stand, the people, the vote. And even that they've been meddling with, but foreign powers and domestic. But it is where we take our stand, and we do have a chance to turn this around and be the civilized country that we thought we were, and be that a country as rich as this has people lacking medical care and food, has children going without vaccinations when they need them, because of ignorance, because of poverty, because of deliberate misinformation from the government, because of this regime, as I call them, their terror of science, and their preference for superstition. It's just as absolutely appalling in 2019. Sometimes I wake up and I think, is this 1952 or is it 2019? So we're awfully glad to have you on the watch, Leana. If you had your druthers and were able to move forward proactively instead of being forced into reactiveness just to keep women alive, what kinds of dreams would you have for PP?
Well, those dreams are a reality as well, because I've been traveling around the country visiting our affiliates and our health centers, and I see incredible work done around the country. I just came back from California, and I saw how one of our affiliates there in Planned Parenthood Mar Monte, which covers Northern California as well as parts of Nevada, they have primary care, mental health services. They provide health care from newborn to 100 plus and address all of a person's needs. I would love to have that be the model around the country, where a person can walk into any Planned Parenthood health center, no matter who you are, what age you are, whether you have a physical issue, whether you have untreated and undiagnosed mental health conditions, and you can get everything treated. I mean, I was hearing and seeing how women would come to this health center. They would come for their prenatal care, they would deliver their baby, then they would come for their postnatal care, and they would also get their newborn to be treated at the same time and diagnosed and weighed and vaccinated and everything. And isn't that the type of health care that we all would want? And if this woman would, if she has high blood pressure, she would get it treated there. If she has diabetes, if she has postpartum depression, she would all get it treated there too. It's that whole person model of care that's already being done. And I also see how in so many communities around the country, Planned Parenthood is an integral part of the public health system. But then I also see in Ohio, our public health funding has just been cut. And we have a very successful program in Ohio called Healthy Moms, Healthy Babies, where we do home visiting for pregnant moms. We assist them postpartum and are instrumental in reducing maternal and infant mortality. Well, we have just been cut out of that program. Planned Parenthood is now not allowed to participate in that program because of lawmakers that want to harm women's health care and reproductive health care. That's what's happening around the country. And I see that stark dichotomy of the here's what we spent all our time fighting. And if only we could devote these resources to providing healthcare to people, the full range of healthcare, which includes the right to safe legal abortion, which is healthcare.
That's right.
If we could do that, imagine how much good we could have across the country. And that's what we should be doing as a country, improving health outcomes, reducing disparities, instead of trying to take away people's basic rights.
Oh my God, it's amazing. It is extraordinary, and so are you. Dr. Leana Wen, thank you so much for being, period, just being, and then also now for taking up the banner and the reality of Planned Parenthood and Planned Parenthood Action Fund, Planned Parenthood Federation of America, and Planned Parenthood Action Fund. You are something very special, and we're honored to have you, and I look forward to many years of supporting you and working together. And listeners, if you don't support Planned Parenthood, you really must. You can't get up in the morning and look in the mirror and not. And think of this wonderful, fantastic young woman who is now the energetic beacon at its head. And Leana, anytime you want to publicize anything or a voice on anything, you are so welcome here. We are on your side. We're your turf.
Thank you very much, Robin, and thank you for all the incredible work that you have done and continue to do.
Well, right back at you. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you back here many times.
Thank you very much.
And we need to take one final break, and then we'll be right back with some fighting words.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, it's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Talk radio with a brain.
And we're back again with some fighting words. For the record, let me be clear. I would eagerly consider giving up my American citizenship if it meant I ever had to vote for Donald J. Trump. If the Democratic Party or any other party ran a platypus in opposition to Donald J. Trump and that was the only opposition, I would be among the first to wear buttons proclaiming duck-billed platypus for president and an amphibian, an egg-laying mammal. Who better can bring us together? You get the point. That said, I'm in need of a vent about the would-be Democratic candidates, more of whom pile on each day. Let me specify. I'm in need of a vent about the boys. Oh, I should also say up front that I believe strongly in the right of any American citizen to run for any office, including the presidency, law permitting. This is not about can they run. This is about should they run. For the first time in U.S. history, the House of Representatives actually looks a bit like the population. Though even so, women don't have parity. We're over 51% of the population and only 23.4% of Congress. Nevertheless, the 2018 election was historic and also herstory. The same is true of the candidates already running for the Democratic nomination for president. More women candidates and more candidates of color than ever before. My heart does break a little each time I think about Hillary having paved the way at such great personal cost. But then I remember the proverb of the indigenous Inuit people of Alaska and Canada. It is the first swimmer on the ice who gets the most cut. The second finds the ice broken, and the third finds it gone. I look around at the women who've already announced their candidacy for the Democratic nomination and already are running hard. Some have more fire than others. Some have greater experience than others. Some just seem to glow with charisma and represent leadership incarnate. And a couple seem, to be honest, to be running vanity campaigns with very high-pitched voices. But I would sleep far more comfortably with any one of them in the White House than with Trump. And the same can be said, although grudgingly, for most of the guys. But we seem to have these four boys, the B-boys, Bernie, Biden, Beto, and Buttigieg. And yes, that is how you pronounce it. He's the latest new phenom, the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, Pete Buttigieg. I'm leaving African Americans Cory Booker and Mayor Wayne Messam and Latino former HUD Secretary Julian Castro out of this equation, since they're people of color, although men. And frankly, only Booker stands a chance of getting on the ticket. And of course, there's lots of completely unknown and unexperienced white men named things like Hickenlooper, Delaney, and so forth, and even, God help us, Marianne Williamson, the feel-good white woman guru, who hasn't one whit of experience, but is running anyway to make us all feel good. But let's get serious. Serious probably means one of the B-boys. I'm sure they're all decent human beings, though I cannot say the same for the Bernie bros, But being a decent human being of the male persuasion is just not good enough anymore. A large part of me screams, how the hell dare you guys? Bernie, you claim you want to correct the sexist and racist mistakes you made last time, all the while you're making them all anew this time. The truth is, Bernie, you don't get it. People could have your exact same political policies from Elizabeth Warren and not have to be harangued by yet another pale male. So please give it up once and for all. Joe, sure, you bring the greatest experience, no doubt, and you've done some terrific things. But you also tote heavy baggage. Frankly, I've never forgiven you, and won't, for what you did in the Anita Hill Clarence Thomas hearings. And apologizing now in a half-hearted manner by saying, oh, you're sorry you were not able to control the Republicans on the committee better, that just doesn't cut it. You, yourself, you were the chair of the committee. You could have called to testify the two women who were waiting in the wings to corroborate Anita's testimony, which would have done the trick and saved us from Clarence Thomas all these years. But you never called them, and you chose a man's word over a woman's, claiming that fighting racism was your excuse, when both the man and the woman were, and still are, African American. Think how that move alone would have changed history. There have been lots of other egregious errors you've made, and lots of other good things you've done. But, Joe, the time is past, and experience notwithstanding, the time very well may have passed you by. Beto, WTF. No experience, no humility, no letting his wife speak for herself in a joint interview, but speaking for her when she opens her mouth. Oh, my God! Coasting on youth, charm, charisma, lots of contributors, manic energy, and hand action, the like of which we haven't seen since, I don't know, Zazu Pitts or Liberace, plus the ability to leap onto tables with your shoes on at a single bound. These are tables that people eat off of, Beto. Certainly, coming close to beating Ted Cruz was a feat of good organizing, no pun intended. But the changing demographics of Texas may be more to thank than any political brilliance on your part. Basically, you are being idolized for looking a lot like Robert F. Kennedy, and for having come close to a win, but having lost. Stacey Abrams, far more experienced in local and state governments than Beto, also came close, and in an even deeper red state, Georgia, while being both black and female. She lost also. So then why, Beto, do trumpets and drums of adoration attend your every appearance, and your media coverage alone is continuous and massive? Why are both markedly different regarding Stacey Abrams? Mayor Pete Buttigieg, South Bend, Indiana. Well, you're clearly a smart and nice man, a gay man, a courteous, dignified policy wonk, with an apparent demeanor that might even be called quite sweet. Talk about likable. But, frankly, are we so fixated on having a president with a pink penis that any other seeming impediments, being too old or too young or gay or not, fall away? At least he's a guy. Wake-up call. All 4 B-boys are white and male, and the country, surprise, no longer is. In fact, it hasn't been for some time. Honest, how dare any white progressive males even throw their hats in the ring when Senator Kamala Harris's hat is already there, and possibly Stacey Abrams herself, and Tulsi Gabbard, and white women senators Amy Klobuchar, Elizabeth Warren, and Kirsten Gillibrand. Feminists are accustomed to being shocked, but not surprised. That includes me. We're only at the very beginning of a long and winding road to the 2020 presidential election, in which we also need to take the Senate back expand a grip on the House, and elect the President of the United States. But I couldn't let even this early stage go by when most of the news coverage and money is already cascading generously over the four B-boys without calling that out. The sheer audacity of entitlement of those white males. It permits them to praise a more multicolored Congress that is beginning to approach gender representation, although nowhere near parity. That audacity of entitlement has to be named whenever pale males praise progress, yet insert themselves blithely into the conversation. Besides, it's practical to focus on women, and Democrats would be terminally stupid to ignore women, especially women of color. Women are the future of this country. Research from the data firm Catalyst shows that women of color have the strongest propensity to vote Democratic. 88% supported Democrats in the 2018 midterms, compared with 48% of white women and 38% of white men. Women of color also hold a substantial share of the eligible electorate in the Sun Belt, crucial to an alternative electoral strategy. 21% in Georgia, 15% in North Carolina, and 11% in Texas. That's according to 2016 data calculated from the current population survey by Catalyst. Women of color particularly are America's future. Otherwise, guys, it's platypus power, and the platypus better be a she. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter, and remember to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag Fighting Words. And that's our show for today. You can follow me on Twitter at @TheRobinMorgan and on Facebook at facebook.com/TheRobinMorgan. Check out my blog at robinmorgan.net and find my latest book, Dark Matter, wherever books are sold. Opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the Women's Media Center. Here's the family for our show. Executive producer as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer of this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us again next time on Women's Media Center Live.